This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Vito Churko here for a special edition of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, previewing the Outback Bowl featuring Michigan and South Carolina. On paper, both look to be about the same kind of a team, same caliber of a squad, both 8-4 squads, both coached by big-name coaches in Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, Will Muschamp at South Carolina. And the difference, though, in this contest could be the defense, the defensive playmakers, and specifically the defensive front seven of Michigan, facing a South Carolina squad that did not have the best offense throughout the season, a team that its rushing game averaged less than 50 yards in 5 games this season. And Michigan's D, remember, third best in the country in total defense, allowing less than 270 yards per game. So that's a key stat to keep in mind here. And you look at the fact, too, that Michigan could have a nice day through the air. Brandon Peters has had a good amount of time to prepare for this contest as well, to develop some chemistry with Donovan Peoples-Jones, Zach Gentry, and others in the passing game through practice. And you got to bring up the South Carolina's D gave up more than 227 yards per game through the air. So if Michigan actually allows Peters to take some shots through the air, there could be some opportunities for some long passes, long completions, and touchdowns. That would mean through the air too. So we will see what the game plan is. Throughout the season, it really was developing the ground game and going about the offense via that route. Will it be the same? Will there be any adjustments made because of South Carolina's porous pass D? You could see that being the case, especially if now Michigan has gained some trust in its passer, Brandon Peters, a guy that will be fighting for his job along with Shea Patterson, and also true freshman Dylan McCaffrey in the spring. So Peters has a chance to have a nice day. The only disadvantage for U of M with being able to develop a passing game and all-around offensive attack against South Carolina is something that has hindered Michigan all throughout the season, and that is its porous offensive line, raw and inexperienced, and one of the weakest links, you could argue the weakest link on offense all season long, has been that O-line, which has allowed 34 sacks this season, and that ranks 109th nationally. Not a good thing for U of M offensively. And Peters, if he's not connecting with his wideouts, well, guess what? South Carolina could strike, as it's proven to be a very opportunistic defense all season long, with 23 turnovers gained in 2017, including 11 fumbles and 12 INTs. So you have that as well working against Brandon Peters and U of M's offensive attack. And you got to believe that its bread and butter, the ground game, will be something thoroughly used that will be gone too often offensively, at least to develop some kind of flow offensively. And you know what? If they get that ground game going, because of South Carolina's D being weak against the passing game, you could see Brandon Peters potentially lighting it up. But once again, it goes back to U of M's trust in throwing the football with Peters under center. And with things appearing so even, both squads appearing so evenly matched, and it's not just the records, but the stats that I just laid out, it is why Michigan's potent defense, really the biggest strength that either squad has. That's why that should be the difference in this game, allowing U of M to come out victorious. And I believe in a close fashion, because there's not much of a difference in these two squads once again, but I believe Michigan comes out on top, and a close one about, I would say it'll be a 23-14 ball game, 23-17, and I'm going to go with the 23-14 victory for Michigan in this contest. And once again, because of the fact that it will be able to ride the strength of its defense, that imposing, that superior front seven it has on the D-line, led by Mo Hurst and Rashawn Gary, those two dogs, big men on that D-line, should prove to be extreme difference makers in this contest, guys. One other quick note before I get out of here. South Carolina's starting quarterback, Jake Bentley, who has thrown 16 touchdowns, 11 INTs this season. Jim Harbaugh, when asked to comment about him, said he's a composed guy, doesn't rattle or get flinched. Now, against Michigan's great imposing defensive line, you would have to believe Bentley might be in some trouble and might end up throwing a pick or two because of the pressure that U of M's D-line, the biggest strength of the contest, will impose upon Bentley in the Outback Bowl. And that's why, as good as Bentley has been and can be, I think Michigan's D-line defensive pressure is too much for Bentley to overcome. Thus, although Bentley is the quarterback with better numbers, more reps this season than the young Brandon Peters, I would have to believe that Bentley and that strength at quarterback for South Carolina isn't going to look like as much of a strength because of the challenges that Michigan's defense and specifically its D-line does pose. And that's all for me. Let's get my brother, Dominic Chirco's thoughts now on the football season, the regular season that was for U of M and Jim Harbaugh in his third year on the job as head man at Michigan. Dom, what were your overall thoughts on Michigan and the season that it had?
My overall thought, I was disappointed in Michigan this year. I thought they underachieved for what they have. I know they lost a lot of guys last year in the draft. Jabril, your Viper spot. A lot of younger guys. It's nice. I think there's some surprising aspects too. But 4 losses in the Big Ten, going 5-4 in the conference is not good enough for Michigan. Last year you're close to making the national championship game. You know, you don't lose to Ohio State on that 4th and inches play. Then you're in the playoff at least. So that's a little disappointing. I think Don Brown and the defense, they kept things pretty steady. Rashawn Gary, another good year. They're going to lose some guys in the defensive end, but they're going to be set offensive line and defensive lines. A lot of 4-star recruits coming in, and they're able to fill those spots effectively. Now going forward, the quarterback position. You have 2 quarterbacks that they signed, Joe Milton and Kevin Doyle, quarterback Kevin Doyle. So, they're going to have a quarterback battle going to spring, and both those guys are, Milton at least, enrolled early in January, so he'll be able to take part in spring practices in camp beforehand. So, but as far as the last season, this season is gone. They did well they've suffocated offenses that are meager at best, and they struggled against offenses in their own conference like Ohio State. They struggled to make stops there. But going forward, they got to have their skill players, their wide receivers. It's good to have Mustafa Muhammad come in next year, their highest ranked skill player in this year's recruiting class, come in and build for the rest of the team. Guys at other skill spots like wide receiver for Donovan Peoples-Jones, see him grow. I think there's a lot of hope for Michigan. However, Michigan State's going to bring back most of their offensive line. They're going to lose senior captain Brian Allen, but after that, they're going to bring about most of the offensive line is coming back. So Michigan State with the Workey, LJ Scott, we'll see if he goes pro. If he stays, Michigan State's going to have a good team again, and they're going to have Michigan at home. So, and Ohio State's going to have Michigan at home. It's tough because teams are Ohio State should be younger. They're going to lose guys, but they're going to, obviously with recruiting classes, same goes with them as far as being able to restock and replenish their offensive lines and defensive lines as well as Michigan can. The other teams, too, in the Big Ten are getting better. We see Wisconsin, emphatic win against Miami, which is a virtual road game, by the way, played at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida, on the road there. Wisconsin's going to be back. Hornibrook will be back. Jonathan Taylor, freshman running back, will be back. So you get 2 teams right there. It'll be tough. Wisconsin's not in the East. Ohio State, mentioned before, and the rest of the Big Ten should be tough as well going forward. So a disappointing year for Harbaugh, and Harbaugh does have pressure on him next year to find a quarterback and just find stability at quarterback, more specifically going forward, and that'll ensure Jim Harbaugh is not on the hot seat.
So, Dom, really quick, an Outback Bowl prediction. Who do you got and why, and a final score?
So both teams have struggled offensively this year. We've known about Michigan's struggles, but we know about South Carolina's struggles. They've had coaching changes at the offensive coordinator spot. Now the wide receivers coach is going to be offensive coordinator for this game for South Carolina. Their defense is okay, but their offense, they don't have enough skill players, and Michigan tends to do well against, as I mentioned before, meager offenses, and South Carolina surely has one. I got Michigan in a tight, close game, low scoring. I got Michigan 21-17.
And that's all she wrote for this special edition of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, a preview of the Outback Bowl on New Year's Day featuring Michigan and South Carolina. Goodbye.